Well, this is a perfect time to talk about what Ms. Dwell does in probate court. Can you explain a little bit about
Sure.
the
We
process?
do a variety of things with mental health. The one that is most consumers, most of the public may be familiar with, is that we do orders to apprehend, also commonly called pickup orders.
Okay.
An order to apprehend is where two people will come in and they are able to truthfully state to the court an affidavit that they have seen the subject and that what they have seen or heard leads them to conclude that the person is in need of an involuntary evaluation. And so they'll fill out these forms, and then we actually go through a hearing, and I will talk to them from the bench and find out what the situation is.
So two people have to come in?
Two people.
Okay.
They both have to have seen them within that 48-hour period. It's not enough to talk to them on the telephone. They actually have to observe them in some form or fashion. You know, physical proximity is necessary.
I did bring a picture of her on the bench in action,
Very
so
good.
that's what she looks like in her robe.
And what we do is when we start discussing what's going on in their situation, I'm able to hear from them firsthand whether it's something that meets the criteria. And the main criteria, we have three main criteria. One is that they are a threat to themselves, a threat to somebody else, or so unable to care for themselves that they need an involuntary evaluation, talking about some of either they're harmful to themselves or that they have refused to get out of bed, they're refusing to eat, they've lost significant weight, something that puts them in danger, that they need to be seen by a doctor or psychologist. So what will happen if the order is granted is that the subject will be transported by the deputies. They'll usually go, at least two of them, and transport them to one of the two receiving facilities for Gwinnett County to an emergency room. They'll make sure that they are physically stable, that they don't have any wounds that need to be treated or their diabetic problem or whatever it is, and then they will do an evaluation. They can hold them up to 72 hours in order to do that, and they can decide that they don't need treatment, they can decide that they need outpatient treatment, or they can decide that the person really does need to have inpatient treatment.
And if they decide that the patient needs inpatient treatment, what facilities are available for that?
GRN is the overarching entity, again, the public mental health system for making placements. What they will do is they will find the most appropriate facility for that person in Gwinnett or outside if necessary.
How many does Gwinnett have?
Gwinnett has a couple of private. We have two, both Gwinnett Medical Center and Emory Eastside have facilities, and they are often
But those
the
are
starting
emergency.
place. Those are emergency. They actually have some short-term.
Okay.
GRN has a short-term stay, meaning 30 days or less, so they can do some inpatient treatment there. And then outside of Gwinnett, there are several other facilities that do longer term, most of them private. And then there's always Georgia Regional, which is down in Panthersville and DeKalb County, which is usually pretty severe cases that need longer term treatment.
What are our statistics, to your knowledge, of the mental illness cases that come through your courts?
The number of cases has risen dramatically. Part of it is because of the increase in the population, and part of it is because we have really tried to raise the awareness of our availability to do these types of orders. And looking at our numbers, like around 2000, we had about 76 or so of these a year, pickup orders, and then we went to 2003 and we were just under 140 a year. 2005, we'd already hit above 170, and our statistics for this year are definitely showing that we continue to do both inpatient and outpatient treatment.
And you think because the population growth, one reason?
I think that and awareness. We also go out, Judge Clark and I go out to the police academy and talk to the new recruits and explain to them what we can do if they reach a situation that may need that. So we try and do this to both the public as well as on all levels. And we do these types of shows because we want people to know we are there.
Okay.
Training is something else the Sheriff's Department has increased. I think the new recruits are getting like 3 full days on how to work with mentally ill inmates, and so that's definitely something we're having to adjust to. I wanted to mention something about a case you and I have worked together on. I sit in on hearings sometimes with Miss Dwell. This was a case of an 80-year-old lady in Duluth who has a 40-year-old paranoid schizophrenic daughter. And she's come in several times, and tried to, well, actually has gotten orders to apprehend. And we've picked up her daughter and taken her to the hospital a couple times. And it just seems like it's kind of been ongoing. And the problem is the daughter's in denial and she won't take her medicine.
And that's a common reason why people end up in our court. We have people who remain stable for long periods of time and they just stop taking them, and they need to be redirected and the family's not able to get them to go back to the doctor. It's kind of a hard thing to do. And we also have people who become very violent and they go inpatient. They think they're going to take their meds, or they agree to, and they get out and they will not. And so it becomes very cyclical.
Mm-hmm. Some other factors in the medication thing, though, and I think you're going to see an increase in this due to the economy, is while we talk about GRN being on a sliding scale and stuff like that, medications generally sometimes are not, and the name brand medications are often what they have to really do a good job for an individual. Those things are expensive, and if you don't have insurance, they generally aren't covered. Mm-hmm. With the economy going the way it is, I expect to see an increase in people.
And I think that's definitely a relevant situation right now. In fact, the NAMI puts out this wonderful Gwinnett Community Help Book, and one of the pieces of information there, and there are multiple, whether they're legal or resources, is a list of the manufacturers of the medications, because Absolutely. A lot of them, whether they be any of the manufacturers that you may Schering-Plough, etc., and they have contact numbers in there where you can actually call them and find out if they have a program where they offer reduced rates if you right. cannot afford them. So I will say this on their behalf, that the pharmaceutical companies are trying to do what they can because they know people need them to mm-hmm. stay stable.
Well, in this Duluth case, and I'll refer to her as Helen, she basically lives in fear of her daughter. She has to lock herself in her bedroom at night. I just showed a picture to Julie where the daughter is destroying the house.
And legally, there's no way to make her take her medication.
The only time that someone can be forced to take medication is when they are violent, a threat to themselves or somebody else, meaning that they are, threatening suicide or homicide, and they're inpatient. They can force the medications on them. If someone is just on the outside at home and acting bizarre, for
right.
lack of a better word, you cannot force them to take medications. They have the right to refuse. Mm-hmm. It's no different than diabetic sure. medication. You cannot be forced to take it.
No, and it's not a good idea to try too, because then that offers up the opportunity for an altercation
right.
and violence.
Right.
And they are resistant.
Yes.
Well, how can people get help? What are you?
Well, as I mentioned, we have our support group meetings at the Lawrenceville Presbyterian Church. We have a graphic I think we're going to put up about that shows the phone numbers and websites of not only NAMI Gwinnett, but NAMI Georgia and NAMI National. And the biggest thing, one of the biggest things, is support and education. The two biggest things are support and education.
Mm-hmm. And the orders to apprehend are what we call probate orders. Right. They're free for...
They are free. There's no filing fees associated. We are open Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. And any two people who, again, they don't have to be related or anything else, who have seen the person come in and fill out the paperwork. We will often talk with them, and sometimes we offer alternatives to doing this. Sometimes we try and encourage them to get the person to go voluntarily. A lot of times they've already tried that. Sometimes we suggest protective orders when there really are violence issues involved. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a form fill out and an order. We really try and work with people.